All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to what's going to be the first episode of Vets Discuss. I've got two awesome guests that are waiting in the wings. They are both veterans, of course. Big surprise given the motif of the episode. Uh, can't wait to sit down here for about the next hour and a half, and chat with them about the Wheel of Time and the military, two of my most favorite things in the world, if that wasn't already obvious. So, for those of you that are easily susceptible to super motivational and cheesy military style videos, this is your warning. I'm going to tell it to play, and in the background, I'm going to bring the guest in, and hopefully it doesn't interfere with each other. So if it does, blame StreamYard, not me, but I think it'll be fine. So we're going to do that. Hope you guys are ready. Hope you guys are going to enjoy this. I know I am. So here we go. Super moto stuff. Does it not have sound? Of course, it doesn't have sound. Of course, it doesn't have sound. One thing has to break. One thing has to break.
It's never what you expect. It's like being in the military.
I know, right? See, that was a military grade clip. You could
Yes,
see
it
it, but
was.
you couldn't hear it. So I'm gonna see if I know I have it where it works. Yeah, no, that's what happened whenever I rendered it out into the file format it needed to be. It lost all of the audio because why not? So while I'm working on getting this thing in an actual workable state as far as the video is concerned, gentlemen, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who you are?
After you, sir.
No, Evan, please, by all means.
Hey, I'm Evan, Evan Hopwell. Anyone from Twitter probably knows me because I never shut up. Uh, but yeah, I was a supply clerk in the Navy from 1985 to 92, which means I'm not just a veteran, but I'm an old man. And happy to be here.
I'm he who comes with the dawn. I mean, I've been on Twitter for a while, but not so much active in the Wheel of Time community as I should have been all this year. I don't know really why, but anyway, I was or am a Marine. I served from '98 to 2003 as an air traffic controller, and that is the short of it.
Awesome. Well, I, of course, am Andrew. I was in the Air Force from 2012 until 2019. So, and I served as a member of security forces, which everybody goes, what is that? Military police for the Air Force with a little different style training. Do some extra stuff that they show in all of the HUA videos that get you super excited, like, oh, security force is going to be great, and then like 80% of your career is sitting there staring at people as they walk by and checking their ID. So
Yeah.
the HUA videos got me once again, but it was the only profession that I was interested in the Air Force that guaranteed that I got to play with the military's big pew pew toys, which was what I wanted to do. So at least once a year, we got to go to a cool range and we got to do some fun stuff, but that's about it. So yeah, so the whole point of this stream is to get some veterans together. It may always be us three. We may add a couple. We may rotate in and out a couple. Just depends on availability and who can be here. I know Josh wanted to be here for this because he is also a veteran of the Air Force. Actually made it one rank higher than me, but at least we're out. So you hold no power over me.
Who's counting,
right?
right?
Huh?
Who's counting, right?
Yeah, who's counting, right? So yeah. I think he was a crew chief or worked in maintenance, I think. I should really remember exactly what he did, but I don't. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about all kind of things military, and it should be a lot of fun to kind of explore the Wheel of Time kind of through that veteran lens. So in the future, whether it be in this episode or in future episodes, we're obviously going to talk about military events from the books, battles, military structures, how the generals act, and all that other kind of stuff. But today, I think we kind of talked, and we were just like, well, let's just kind of talk about our experiences, so people kind of get to know kind of where we're coming from a little bit better. Because a peek into a veteran's head is both an interesting and a terrifying experience for all of the right and wrong reasons. And then, we'll kind of talk a little bit about at least what we know about Robert Jordan's experience in the United States military. So I don't know. Let's just jump into it so that I can stop talking the entire time. Let's just see them. Is anything like sticking out in your head, like something that maybe from your career that you like feel like, okay, if I had to explain my career in one event, what would be like? Do you have that one event that would explain like this is pretty much how my career went?
Well, for me, it's kind of, I guess 9/11 was the defining event of my career. I was working traffic when that all happened, and like all good Marines, most of us don't join to not go anywhere and to not do anything. We're all, like you said, quite into the hua aspect. Even if you are a winger or you're sitting behind a desk, you always want to play with the stuff, and everyone stepped up and volunteered as everyone expected. I didn't get to deploy as a Marine. It was one of the things that just kind of, it never worked out. The timing was off, and it's just kind of what happened. What I did end up being able to do was deploy as a contractor afterwards with the Air Force and the Navy in the Middle East, and continue to, I guess, in some way serve the country and experience everything through maybe a different lens that I would have had I deployed with the Marine Corps. So that's one of the defining things about my experience with the military. It's not just the idea that I got to deploy and I served with my country, but I also ended up having to serve in an international base with people from lots of other countries all over Europe, all of our allies, which kind of really opened up my eyes to different experiences that we have as members of the military, across the spectrum. So that's a little bit about me and what I, recall from all that. Aside from all the other shenanigans, of course, which there were a lot. Shenanigans abound when you pile together a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds and tell them to be in charge of each other.
Yeah. Statute of limitations still hasn't run out on those, so we're not going to talk about
them. Yeah, see, for me, I had a pretty different experience in the military. I was a supply clerk, like I said, so really I spent most of my time behind a desk or in a storeroom or a warehouse, depending on where I was at the time. To me, the really big part of it for me was the travel. I was stationed on a destroyer out of Japan, USS Oldendorf. Long may she rest in peace at the bottom of the ocean. But because she was decommissioned and sunk as a target practice, missile practice.
Okay.
So she's at the bottom of one ocean or another, somewhere in the Pacific, I think. But while I was in, we got to do a few really cool things. We got to participate in the 75th anniversary of the Australian Navy. So, a week in Sydney with ships from different countries all over the world. And we were also one of the first 3 ships to visit the People's Republic of China. That was in 1986. The revolution there happened in 1949, and and we were the first ships allowed back in to visit for a week in Qingdao, which was really interesting. China at the time, you see the modern stuff of the big cities and the modern everything. In 1986, everything was mostly like gravel roads, gravel streets in a big city, and pretty much cast off 70s fashion for the people who had means, and pretty much military style uniforms on the street for just the general population. It was quite an eye-opening experience. I had shared, I think on Twitter, a picture of me and one of my shipmates. We were holding a little kid he was probably 2 years old and had on like a military uniform. It was such a trip, but yeah, just the cultural stuff like that, I think, is what sticks with me the most. I wasn't really in during wartime. The first Gulf War was right at the tail end of my second hitch. But I wasn't like stop lost or anything because I wasn't in a combat MOS or anything. So yeah, it was a cool experience though. I do not regret it for a moment. And whether it was, seeing Sydney or China or one of any number of countries that we visited, or just sitting behind a desk while we were doing circles outside the Persian Gulf. It was what it was. But it was still a very defining experience of my young life.
Yeah, I almost got to see Australia. We were supposed to TDY. So, I spent most of my time in the Guard component, the South Carolina Air Guard component of the United States Air Force. The last 4 to 5 years or so were when I was full time. Because before then, I joined while I was a college student at USC Aiken, and what I did, because I wanted to make extra money, and I was like trying to get them to hire me on full time on base, to give me a full time slot, whether it was as a Fed Tech or as an AGR. I would work one weekend at my on campus job, and then I'd have my drill weekend for traditional guardsmen, and then I would work 2 weekends on base. So I'd be there for 3 weekends on base, working, driving an hour and a half from Aiken, staying the night, with my folks who lived in the general area of the base I was assigned to, and then going back to college, which turned out to be good because eventually I did get that Fed Tech position. So I got hired on to work out there full time when I transferred to USC Columbia as a GS6 Step 1. So for those of you, it's GS is government scale. It's kind of just a pay scale for government employees. It's kind of fixed rate and fixed steps you can go up through, and then the pay changes based off of your GS level and what step you are. I didn't get to explore too much of that because after about, I don't know, 6 to 8-ish months of being a federal technician, I deployed, and I was like, cool. They're like, you're going to the Middle East. And I was like, cool. I'll actually be able to say I did something. And then they're like, you're going to UAE. And I'm like, shit. Because at the time, like I'd heard of the United Arab Emirates. I never I couldn't point it out to you on a map, like back whenever we were going, and they're like, you also can't tell anybody you're going. Why? Because it's an undisclosed location for us. Politically, we can't say that we're in UAE. And then people continue this is one of the things that always frustrated me. So I got in country, right? And you're looking around at all this stuff, and they have all of these shirts and shorts and coins and all the stuff you can buy. And every last bit of it is stamped with UAE or Al Dhafra Air Base. It's all stamped with all of this stuff. And you're just kind of like, this is the weirdest undisclosed location I've ever been to in my life. And while we were there, So in the Air Force, they have what's called the Top Cop. It's a 1-star general that's in charge of security forces across the board, whether you're active, guard, reservist, it doesn't matter. Top Cop. Top Cop came to visit while we were there. There was a slight fiasco because one of the pictures he took in our guard mount tent, where we got all of our briefings before we fully went out for the day to work our shift. You could see in the background they didn't exactly sanitize the area of all markings that said UAE pretty quickly. So we were kind of looking at that like we'd all be in trouble because like they basically told us that if we could buy the stuff and we could take it home with us when we go, but we couldn't mail it back home because that would tell everybody where we were. And we're like, so they spun this whole thing that you get in so much trouble if you did something. And then of course people did it and nothing ever happened. Nobody ever knew. It was like, oh yeah, they check every piece of mail you send back. You can't send anything back to straight. And then you go to the little post office on base and they're just like, they just take your stuff that's already in a box and they're like, okay, cool. And then they just ship it. Kind of like that spinning a tale of how you'll get in trouble to try to fear you into not doing something that they know they're probably not going to catch you doing. But then we had, I think while we were there, I think I was off on the day that they came, but we had the SecDef. I think it was the SecDef there. I think it was John Kerry at the time, actually, because this was late 2015 into 2016, because I was in country from October 2015, and I left literally May 1st of 2016. So I don't remember.
You weren't there in the summer.
Yeah. And I got to work night shift. It was freaking cushy. It's awesome.
Nice.
So Al-Dhafar Air Base is one of the bases where, even though we were in the Middle East and under General Order 1, there was an exception for alcohol. So we could have 3 standard drinks unless it was a holiday. Then we got 4. And people went nuts when they had 4.
Man,
and it was
I was on a European base. I didn't have that restriction.
Yeah.
Nice. It was crazy though, because you think like 4 standard drinks. Well, that's nothing. Like, especially for the military, whatever. That's not a big deal. But I remember distinctly the night somebody in the supply chain convinced them to let them order Wild Turkey 101. And oh boy, people were going 8 hours intentionally not eating so that it would get into their system faster and less filtered through food. They were sitting there taking like triple shots at once and then like chasing it with like a beer. The real daredevils were just taking 4 straight shots of Wild Turkey and then just going nuts. It was crazy. I'm so enthralled in like just talking about the military experience that I'm not gonna lie. For a moment, I forgot that we're live and we have chat. So let's see. Matt's Dagger tore your ACL last week at basic. Last week of basic. I was like, last week at basic. How are you here? Last week of basic at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Definitely know where that is. I've been on there plenty of times and been able to look at the boots and be like, it's not me. It's funny because I'm not in training. Spent the next 8 months getting surgery and physical therapy. Medically discharged. Your experience was a lot of hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
That seems par for the course for a medical separation, especially during basic. Basic's pretty ruthless with their, from what I understand, across all branches. I know it was in the Air Force. If you're over at medical, especially if it's already like, we're going to get rid of you medical, they're pretty ruthless with the just amount of ignoring you they do.
I was my first week actually of boot camp. I rolled my ankle on the very first run. Actually, it was kind of hysterical. And my ankle blew up to the size of a cantaloupe. It was absolutely huge.
Yeah.
I did something terrible to that ankle. Thank God they're covering it still because it still hurts. I was there for an extra 2 months, rehabbing and stuff on Paris Island. With all those beloved sand fleas of ours over there. But I'll tell you what. Sitting at the medical rehab platoon and going through there with all the guys that were part way through training and stuff. by the time I actually made it to the training portion of boot camp, I kind of knew everything that was going to happen. I didn't get surprised by a lot of the crazy stuff that they plan on surprising you with. And then I became like the company scheduler or the scribe and whatnot, and I knew the entire schedule for boot camp, and I was like, all right, they're going to kill us in sand. It says it right here from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. So, all right, that's what we're doing. It's all staged in theatrics. It's
Oh yeah.
It's
yeah.
Mhm.
terrible.
It's kind of funny. I mean, they use very common techniques for like to create a bond and create a unit.
Oh yeah.
You know, sleep deprivation to some, you know, not to like torturous extent, but you know, kind of break you down to build you back up again. And when they build you back up, they build you back up as a unit, you know, so you got that cohesion built in. And you know, honestly, yeah, I was in a fraternity in college, and Hell Week was pretty much the same thing. You know, break you down, make you feel like crap about yourself, and then make you feel better as part of something bigger than yourself. And that's very common bonding and camaraderie technique, psychological technique that's used. It's effective, definitely effective. My boot camp experience was, God, I hate to say it, was a little different. It was a lot easier than it is for a lot of people. It was, I went to boot camp in Orlando, Florida in the middle of summer, from May to July. It was 8 weeks. And because of the heat, during like the regular part of the day, we weren't allowed to run. There was no double timing. There was nothing. You know, they'd get us up at 5 a.m. to go out and run a couple of miles out on, they called it the grinder. So we'd be out running early in the morning or, you know, late after sundown. But during the day, no running allowed, period. And it was also the only co-ed boot camp that the Navy had. So, I mean, we weren't together in the same companies or the same barracks, but we had a sister company that, you know, started and finished the same day. So we would go to classes with them and stuff. And, you know, there's one guy from my boot camp company that married a girl from our sister company right after boot camp. And it's just like, you've known each other for 8 weeks. What the hell? But
we've been through the shit together. You don't
that's
understand.
right. Yeah. We've been through some shit. So yeah. But yeah, so there wasn't as much like, you know, hoorah and, you know, cracking the whip or anything. It was a lot of classes. It was a lot of, you know, I think the best part was like getting inspections, and like some of the female company commanders would come in. Some of the women would come in and do inspections. And I remember one guy who was like standing next to me on the line, you know, this tiny little blonde CC was just, she just asked him a question, and he said, "No, sir." And she stepped right up to him, pressed herself up against his back. She goes, "You feel those tits on your back, recruit?" He says, "Yes." She's like, "Do I feel like a sir to you?"
Oh, geez, yeah, you wouldn't get away with that now.
And,
No.
said, "No, ma'am." Yeah, no, I don't think they get away with it.
Not even when I was in. Well, so that was part of the interesting part, because I obviously joined the Air Force and went to basic well after all the scandals at Lackland, where like so many training instructors, because that's the Air Force, we call them TIs. So many TIs got fired for, you know, doing what they shouldn't have been doing, training trainees in all the wrong ways.
Yes.
To put it delicately. So like they had all these like really strict kind of requirements for them. Like they could not alone be in the barracks after a certain time. Is they had to be a group of like 3 or more, including a female TI, for them to go into any of the female dorms or barracks after a certain time. Like they had to be gone by like 9 o'clock technically. And for the most part, they were. There were several times where, the entire barracks finally gets to sleep at about 9:15 because you haven't been able to really sleep that much in the first week, and then just all you hear is somebody banging on the door to get into the dorm room, like they're trying to break it down, and then you got the poor guys that are still getting used to being in basic that are sitting there with the little training rifles running, fire watch and entry controller, and they're just getting shouted at and everything, and you're just sitting there like, I was really hoping I could sleep, but I guess not. Like my first night there, we got to sleep at like 11:30 because they made us do all of this stuff. So there's all the paperwork you have to do as soon as you get there. It's the most important thing in the world. Cannot wait, because it's their paper trail to process you, right? And then we finally got to lay down at 11:30 after them doing the whole like point at your locker, like put your finger on your locker number, put your finger on your bunk number. Now do it again, like back and forth like 20 times.
Oh man!
And it was like, Jesus Christ. But then so we finally lay down at like 11:30, and after everybody gets their jitters and everything kind of calmed down where they go to sleep, it's like 11:45, midnight. I was asleep for all of 15 to 30 minutes, and then the fire alarm went off. I'm just like, really? So we're sitting there, and like because of all the scandal stuff, they were like, yeah. So when you get up, you're gonna pull the blanket off of your bed and wrap it around yourself, so none of the female troops have to worry about seeing your disgusting bodies. We're like, okay. It was just, oh man, it was something else. The first week, from my experience, was like the worst week it ever got. That's the week that for us, or because at the time Air Force Basic was, I think it still is, but it was 8.5 weeks. So you have 0 week. So all of that and through the first week, they were pretty focused on that, break you down. Got to break you of all your bad habits. We got to, a lot of it is for the idea that they want, for the first week or so, they want you as a flight or as a platoon or as a company or whatever size your group is. They want you to take and kind of look at the instructors as like a common enemy for all of you to face together. Like they want all of you to kind of look at the instructors like, I hate this guy. And then like a switch flips in second week and they're like, cool. So y'all are semi-confident. Now I can talk to you like you're actually worth talking to. And then you wind up like, most people I know everybody in my flight loved our TI except for one guy. Like Staff Sergeant Daigle. I still remember his name. Dude was awesome.
Oh no, we never loved our drill instructors. No. They were a terror from beginning to end, and that's actually at the end, of course, once you get your Robin anchor and whatnot, then they're friendly and whatnot. But it definitely wasn't a friendly atmosphere all the way up until like week 11.
Yeah, you can imagine. Oh, our company commanders were awesome, 2 of them. And there were 80 guys in our company. And our CCs were just great. I mean, they were both chiefs, so E7s, so they were pretty high up and didn't really have anything to prove, Mm-hmm. So I think they were a lot more laid back with us than like maybe a second class or first class would have been.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it. Of course, ours were all E5s, so they still had quite a bit of like you said, quite a bit to prove.
Yeah. I can't imagine that recruit training would be like the easiest job to deal with because it is very high visibility. you know, you're responsible for, taking an entire company of essentially kids through their first experience in the military. So I think it would be pretty stressful and pretty high vis, but at the same time, pretty rewarding, you know?
Yeah, they go through a lot themselves, getting everyone through there, and getting to that point
Yeah.
of their own training. It's matter of fact, my company was close to the drill instructor training area, and I've been back to Paris Island a few times to see family members graduate and things like that, and you see them out there screaming their heads off at trees just to
Yeah.
get used to just the screaming aspect of it, just the loudness and screaming all the nonsense that they scream. That it's something to watch, and it's a lot of work into that.
So I'm gonna hit some stuff from chat. Kind of scrolled way back to the beginning of chat because I knew whenever I got into this window for the stream, I saw a comment that I wanted to bring up. See, do I still have it all the way back in this chat too? I do. Also, by the way, Matt's Dagger. Yeah, it happens to me all the time. Streambot kind of moderates the YouTube chat, and it is incredibly zealous, like White Cloak level zealous about purging messages. And if you type a word, period, and then another word, and it come up, registers as a link, it freaks out. Like, oh, I'm sorry about all your messages before that being deleted. I can still read them in this window, and the guys can too. But wanted to point that
White
out.
Cloaks, how about those in regs mustaches, huh?
Oh yeah,
perfectly in regs.
Perfectly, like these are like World War I, World War II style mustaches, where we're like, we got bigger things to deal with than your mustache. So Ben said this before we started. Father served 2 tours in Vietnam, 1 conscripted and 1 a re-up. Australian Army. Much respect for those served. Much respect to your father for serving.
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
I got to serve in UAE with some Aussie troops. Fucking amazing people. Introduced me to Tim Tams, and I'm forever grateful.
Yeah.
There's few things I love more than working with like other nations' militaries. Like they're just so cool. Like we had Dutch troops there too, and like they had earrings. They were wearing like camo shorts. Like the British have the camo shorts, or at least had. Dudes like long ponytails, beards, and I'm just like, oh,
yep.
Can I has?
Yep.
And they're like, no, you haven't shaved within the last 5 hours. Here, start pushing. By the way, we're taking $30 from your paycheck. It wasn't quite that bad.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. And it looks like we got an old Cav troop. You were in an A10 wing there. Supported us, so keeping one's mouth shut behooved us. The death part from the sky saved many of us. Nice. I don't remember where we were talking about at the time. But it was an A10 wing day. Yeah, I love the A10. And every year they're like, yeah, I think we can retire the A10. The entire military collectively goes, no, never. We could be fighting aliens with like hovering aircraft of our own, and the A10 will probably still be flying in the sky.
It is surprisingly maneuverable too. That's the nice thing about it, because it's flying low and slow, and they can really get in there, get down low, and then get out of the way of itself too. It's a heck of an airframe.
I mean, when you take and build an airframe around the gun that is bigger than the standard Volkswagen Beetle. It's like I don't know any other aircraft that's like that.
What is it? I think it's just a titanium tub with guns and wings. That's it.
Yeah.
What more do you need?
I mean, yeah, they nailed the combination right there. Let's see what else we have here from chat. So old Cav again. I was in country Iraq for 2 months, no showers, pure sweat and stink. Yeah. I'm saying yep, like I know. I have friends that did tours in Iraq, so they said many of the same stories. Rolling to Kirkuk Air Base, Air Force had air conditioned tents. Yeah, you think we're not having our air conditioning, please? It's enough for us to have to deal without our butlers. Come on. That's enough of a sacrifice for when we deploy for, our 6-month standard deployments.
The chow hall at the Air Force bases overseas in Afghanistan had steaks and custom omelets. And
we had them on shipboard, dude.
oh man,
We had them on board ship.
man.
We do complain
Every
about
Saturday
the steaks.
night was steaks. Every Friday was seafood. Once in a while, while I was in, they had, there were a number of Filipino nationals that were, because of the agreement to have Subic Bay as a naval base and like one of the major naval bases in the Western Pacific, they allowed Philippine nationals to join the U.S. Navy. So we had a number of Filipinos on board, and there were times that they would just take over the kitchen and make Filipino dishes for dinner, and it was amazing. It was so good. Pancit and lumpia and yeah, oh yeah.
Dude, I dated a girl when I was in high school that her grandma was like straight from the Philippines, like original like immigrant, and they were Filipino Catholic. So like they invited me to go to mass. It destroyed my watch because it was like in a gym with rubber floors, and they carry the effigies of like I think of Jesus or a saint or something. I'm not terribly familiar, and I can't exactly recall what it was. So I'm sorry to anybody that's Catholic or Filipino Catholic out there. But they kind of walked in a circle for a while around the gym, carrying it around as part of I don't know what to call it, but as a part of honoring him or something like that. And it built up so much static that every time I bumped into my girlfriend at the time, it shocked the crap out of me. And it like did it so many times that it destroyed the digital watch I had.
Oh God!
Oh yeah. Oh, like every time we walk around and I walk past the massive spread of food, I would just like stare at it longingly. And then I finally got there and got some of the pancit and everything. And I was just I fell in love with Filipino food. It's so amazing.
Yeah, that's so good.
Nerdy guns. My father flew helicopters for the Army for 10 years and gave my brother so much crap for joining the Air Force. Like picture still to this day. Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, my oldest brother's a retired Air Force, so we used to swap, flyboy and squid jokes back and forth.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we had. Go ahead.
I said as long as it's all always between us, we give each other quite a bit of crap about.
Oh yeah,
But don't let anyone say it from the outside, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, it's definitely that sibling thing. We can make the jokes about each other all the time, but the second like a non-military or like a civ starts making the jokes, like everybody collectively goes, "No, you don't get to do that." And then the Coast Guard catches the brunt of it. They're like the baby child that nobody wants to play with, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, they weren't even part of the Defense Department for the longest time. They were Department of Transportation.
Yeah. And I think are they still under DoD or did they move to DHS or is DHS under DoD now? I don't remember.
I can't remember.
They're DoD now. Yeah,
I think they're DoD now. They were DOT when I was in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I read somewhere until Desert Storm or whatever, because of the war on drugs, they actually were the one service that was part of the DoD that during the Cold War era and leading up to like 9/11 saw the most action, believe it or not, because of everything they were doing to stop, the CIA from bringing in the drugs.
I think they may still have sections that are under the DHS, and it might be kind of dual headed under DoD and DHS. I don't exactly remember. I had a childhood friend that he joined the Coast Guard, and I never stopped giving him crap for it. I was like, "Oh yeah, you want to go splish splash down in the water? Huh? You want to play puddle pirate?" Because I think that's like one of the common insults, puddle pirates.
That's right.
But then you watch like their videos, and you're like, maybe I should have gone Coast Guard. That's some cool shit right there.
They're seeing some action. Yeah.
the freaking teams they have that board like any of the boats they're checking out, that they're actually like really incredible. And I'm like,
Fighting
okay.
pirates.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
they should. I was
Literally
disappointed that they
fighting
don't swing
pirates.
across. Yeah. Oh, but yeah, it's been interesting. I think so. My grandfather on my mother's side, he was Army Guard for a while. He worked down at a Ute station where they did the more in-depth maintenance for like APCs, tanks, half tracks, all that kind of stuff. Any of the stuff that they couldn't fix at their local the local motor pool. Then I have a great uncle that actually was a Japanese POW during World War II,
Oh wow.
or a POW of the Japanese. And he told part of his story one time. He went through a lot. Like the torture was real. So yeah. And then my dad's my dad's father, as the family story goes, he joined the Army in 1961. So when they first like transitioned trainers over into the full-on drill sergeants. And then everybody says, oh, I'd punch a drill instructor in the mouth or a drill sergeant in the mouth. And apparently he actually did. But because he was an only child and was the only one, or the youngest child rather, and he was supporting his parents, allegedly they still gave him an honorable discharge straight out of basic. And I was like, what? But it was the 60s. Times were crazy.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
but that's how the family story goes. But I don't know anybody else in my family directly that's joined the Air Force. Got a cousin that joined air assault in the Army, or paratrooper, same thing, different thing. I should really know more about this, but either my brain just can't think of it right now. Whatever. He jumps out of aircraft and parachutes down. And he's sent us a couple of videos over the years of him doing it. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Perfectly good airplane. I'll stay in it. I'm good. So
Yep. I'll happily
But-
stay in it.
yeah. So let's see. Nerdy Guns had an uncle, or has an uncle that was in the Navy. Other uncle retired from New York Police Department, so getting them together. Yep, I can imagine that. Yes, it very much is like a family. We all do definitely pick on each other, for all kinds of reasons. So, but I think some of the more interesting ones are like how we make fun, of like the Marines. It's always kind of funny.
To our faces, though.
I mean, that's why I'm talking about it across the screen here.
It's all right.
Dude, the entire time I was in, I was like, please just never send me to Oki. I don't want to do extra combatives training just to have to deal with Marines on Okinawa. Like, no, I was like, no, I'm good.
Too much
think that was guard, so I
competition,
never-
it's way too much competition. Can't handle it. But I actually, although we all make fun, I really enjoyed deploying with the other services and really seeing how they all worked. Everyone's mission is so unique, and all the services really tailor their approach to how they behave, really to that mission, and that's at the end of the day what it's really all about. And thankfully, we get that done. And it translates into civilian life. You end up getting this work ethic that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
You guys have probably seen it. You carry it through to your civilian job, and you're like, why aren't these guys pulling their weight? I think that shines through despite anything and all throughout all the services. That's a big deal.
Yeah. We do have a question from Tig. Have you all read The Wheel of Time?
Oh boy. Eben?
I just finished my 13th read of the entire series. So
Nice.
Wow.
Freaking heart charger over here. Nice.
and I've only been a fan since for about 10 years. So
Oh wow.
I just can't stay away. I can't stay away from it. It just keeps pulling me back in.
I started reading Wheel of Time when I was 14 years old. I'm 41, coming up on 41 now. I've read through the series several times. Matter of fact, my the guys I deployed with thought I was crazy because I brought this footlocker, this big wooden footlocker, and I had all of my Wheel of Time books in there with me. And I didn't care what I was taking with me. I was taking those damn books with me. And I took them all over Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan. They went with me everywhere. I
You're
reread
just
them.
sitting there like, if one of these mortars hits my footlocker,
That's
I'm
it.
gonna go full dragon. I'm gonna go full Dragon Mountain every day.
That's right.
Only thing I cared about.
I will.
And it really helped me, first of all, it kept me, it was like my bit of home, but it kept me well entertained for every single quiet moment we had until we got to an Air Force base and there was Wi-Fi. And God, I must have read the
you
story.
love that Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah. I think I reread it like 8 times, and I just finished my first audio journey with Michael Kramer and Kate Redding.
I haven't done that yet, and I need to.
That, I tell you what, I recommend it. Just the idea that they have the notes from Robert Jordan, and it plays into their intonation of how it all plays out and how they read it. It really changed my perspective on a few things here and there. I really can't pinpoint them at the moment. I was like mind blown, but right now, of course, I can't pinpoint anything specific. But it's I definitely enjoyed it, and I really recommend it.
Yeah, I've read the series 2 or 3 times, with the exception of the well-known exception of mine, or kind of well-known, that I have not read New Spring. And it's almost at a point where it's such a kind of meme for the podcast at this point where
Yeah,
you're being
like, hey,
about this, I think.
Like, we're gonna be on like season 86 of the podcast. I'm gonna be like just covered in wrinkles, barely able to talk, and people are still gonna be giving me crap for not reading New Spring. We'll see. Like,
you can't now. I mean, you just can't.
It's kind of been a thing that long.
You've got to be that guy.
Yeah. And every time I'm like, you mean people kind of want me to keep a metric of not doing that thing? Okay. That's pretty easy to just not do work. But yeah. So we've all finished the series and all that, which is fantastic. And if you're a vet yourself, and this is something you might be interested in coming on to, definitely hit us up on the Discord. You can DM the Black Tower Podcast on Twitter. You can go to blacktowerpod.com, and there's a link to join the Discord there. I think there's probably one down in the description below here for this video as well. So if it's something maybe you want to come on and kind of talk about your experiences and your views of the books and some of the stuff in the books as a vet, by all means, let us know. And we want to work through and give as many vets a chance to do this as possible. And it's kind of
highly recommend.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the aspect of us starting this this kind of series, and I don't know how frequently we're going to do it. I want to do it at least once a month, but if enough people enjoy it, we might do it more, depending on availability, of course. But starting this in November, so we're 6 days away from Veterans Day here in the United States.
That wasn't intentional.
I mean, I totally planned that for this to start in November.
Sure. It was perfectly planned.
Perfectly planned. But yeah, so New Spring is a lie. Yeah, it's a conspiracy. It doesn't actually exist. So let's see. Taig has asked a question. I gotta scroll back up and find it. There it is. So we're gonna delve into this question more in future episodes. This one is kind of geared towards us kind of giving a brief overview of our military experience and stuff like that. And here, when we hit the hour mark, I actually have the Moto video. I actually upload it with audio, it should be. When I play it on the computer, it has audio, put it that way. And we'll get into kind of talking about Robert Jordan's kind of experience with the military from best we can tell. I mean, obviously, I haven't been able to sit down and ask Harriet, like, hey, tell me all about RJ's experience in the military. But So kind of brief thoughts, maybe a minute or two on what you think about how Robert Jordan describes combat and war.
Well, I think that he really encapsulates a lot of aspects of the military experience quite handily. First of all, the camaraderie. We see that with the Emmons Field Five as they go through everything that they go through. One of the things that stands out to me about them is that despite how and spoilers if you're doing that, but despite everything that happens to them, they separate, they come back together, and it's like, what's up, stupid?
Yep.
And that completely plays into exactly how me and some of my my comrades have kept together throughout the years. The other thing is, the fog of war and the repercussions to the fighting person that went through that. I think it shows in a lot of what happens throughout the books, especially towards the later books. It definitely shines through. His experiences are there, and it's going to be fun to pick them out, I think, and discuss them.
What you think, Even?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few moments that are like really kind of personal that I find interesting, like when parents struggle with the fact that he gets into his zone and actually rather enjoys it when he's in battle and time slows down for him, and he has a very just a very kill or be killed, but also a real rush through his body when he's in battle. I think that's a rather common thing. I've been in like 2 fights in my life, so but I remember those moments and how time slows down. It really kind of just makes a lot of sense. Another moment that I think about is toward the end when the Black Tower is split and Androl is basically busted down from dedicated back to soldier, loses his sword pin, and just how much he told himself, this doesn't matter, but it still hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. If I advanced pretty quickly. I was an E6 when I got out after 7 years, and if I'd lost one stripe, I would have just been like done for a little while.
Yeah. I was never in combat myself. So the only stuff on combat and maybe that experience that I could even attempt to actually give true, like from experience feedback on is the training aspect that goes into getting ready for it. Which from all of the people that I served with that were in combat, and most of the vets I've talked to, and other people that have been in combat, even police officers that have been unfortunately in firefights, they're like, yeah, the training is great. You will default to your training, but it's never enough, and it never makes you ready.
Yeah.
And I think you can see that play out through Matt and everything pretty openly. The kind of maneuvering around. I forgot the battle that it was in. I shouldn't have slept as long as I did, because the brain is not firing on all cylinders today. But where's the battle where he keeps maneuvering around and he's got these troops that are following him and he's trying to avoid fights? And
that was fighting the Shido.
That was Karyan.
Yeah. I wanted to say Karyan, but I was like, I'd rather ask and look like I don't remember than be wrong again.
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff where you never know what's coming, and ambushes could be around every corner. That's kind of how I know from my experience we were trained. Like, yeah, if you're doing outside the wire stuff, you never know, it could hit you at any second. So you've always got to be prepared. And it's almost like an orchestrated and kind of intentionally induced sense of paranoia and hypervigilance. But you also know that, like, well, if I'm not kind of in that mindset whenever I'm in an area that we know is prone to danger, then that's how people die. Everything you do wrong in the military, that's how people die.
Yep.
You forgot to blouse your pants, that's how people die. your dress uniform, everything isn't square, that's how people die. Lack of attention to detail. Like the Air Force, when you're in training, they have these little forms called 341s, Air Force Form 341, and it details like your name, your social, like what flight you're with, all that kind of stuff. And anytime you got caught doing something wrong, they'd pull a 341. And the one that I got pulled was whenever I was in tech school, and they pulled a 341 as punishment because you were supposed to carry 3, and I only had 2. So as punishment for only having 2, they pulled 1, and I was just like, this makes no sense at all. But then they pulled 1 from like the entire flight because none of us had like notebooks and pens to write on, and the instructors were pissed about it. And oh, you guys, this is a complete. Well, no, that was the time that they did it for everybody, and kind of nobody got in trouble because they couldn't really punish the whole flight. Mine was during our first like uniform inspection, which was always weird to be inspected in ABUs. It's kind of like, but why though? But yeah, so you never know what's coming, and you can train and drill as much as you do as you want, and it never guarantees that that you are prepared. And in most cases, like there's always some element of it you're not prepared until you've been in a lot. Then you just aren't necessarily prepared, but you are more accustomed to how to react, and you react better immediately upon contact. Oh, okay, I've been here before. This is familiar. This is what happened last time. So here's what I'm going to do this time. From what people told me.
That kind of comes into play in the books with the Children of the Light, where you really see them. They're the force that's been supposedly fighting against Dark Friends forever, and then when they finally actually meet Dark Friends, fall apart.
They're completely useless.
Until finally they get to the core of who's actually prepared to take on that battle, and they pick it up from there. So that's an interesting point. The other thing I can't help but think of is everyone's favorite princeling, Gawain, who is the epitome of fuck up to move up.
Yeah.
Does everything wrong.
Yep. He fails upward all the time.
Fails up the entire time. And that's why, he is the character he is. I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Jordan found one officer in his life out there, Nam, that was Gawain, doing everything wrong, but getting promoted nonetheless.
I found the Black Tower too. Just the whole Battle of Demise Wells. The Black Tower, the Ashaman come in as such a ready, prepared force. And that's the only time you really see them that way, as a cohesive force. But, they're badass, and they're doing exactly what they're meant to do. And then at the beginning of Crown of Swords, you see it from the other side, from the Shido side, basically through Savannah's eyes, but you see what's going on to these people who are just being obliterated by the power and can't really do anything because of the shield that's in the way, the shield of air that's keeping any beast from getting through, and keeping the Aiel from getting through and actually being able to do any damage. It was just, I thought Demise Wells was a really great set piece in Lord of Chaos, but seeing it from the other side at the beginning of Crown of Swords was just, that was Jordan saying, I know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to battle, because here's what it looks like to the losing side,
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine having a QRF that can? I mean, that's essentially like a combination of like being able to call in QRF and CAS at the same time, like, and they just pop
Invisibly.
up where you are. Yeah,
Invisibly, and can explode your head.
yeah. I mean, it's absolutely nutty what they do. Um, and yeah, when I think shock and awe and like overwhelming power kind of military force in the Wheel of Time, of course, I think the Ashaman. Um, There are plenty of like very, very strong, overwhelming forces and everything, but I don't think, because we see the one example of true shock and awe. And I think that kind of plays into, because we'll get into some of Robert Jordan's experience and kind of what he did. So he served in the U.S. Army as a helicopter gunner, serving in Vietnam from 68 to 70. I'm pretty sure he saw a lot of shock and awe tactics in Vietnam.
Oh yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering if that is one of the main impetuses for the scene we see at Dumai as well, as, friendly forces getting overrun, maybe some guys trapped behind enemy lines as prisoners, and you're like, well, we've got to get them, and eventually you hit a point where you're just like, you know what? Call it all in. Like, oh, well, what do you need? Do you need white phosphorus? Do you need napalm? And the answer is yes to everything, and just drop it all.
Just what you have.
But it also speaks to the absolute kind of gruesome nature of how those tactics works, and just being in a large scale war or conflict like that will have. I mean, it goes from everybody being relieved that the Ashaman have showed up to being terrified that the Ashaman have showed up, because they're literally turning people into piles of pulp.
Yeah.
And that definitely harkens back to the way some of the weapons used in war, especially like, wars like World War II and Vietnam and Korea did. Everybody knows the stories of white phosphorus. You definitely don't ever want to get it on your skin, because it's just going to burn until it's done.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So I'm going to take this opportunity, because I said I'd do it at an hour, and we're pretty close to that. And we're kind of kicking over a little bit in Robert Jordan. Going to play the extra moto, the Hua clip. I can't control the volume of it here in StreamYard, so just fair warning, it may be a little on the loud side. I don't know. We'll see what it does, but fair warning. But let's get you kind of an experience, if you haven't seen it before, kind of some military-esque Hua motivation stuff.
Lan Mondragoran.
Yeah, extra hua.
Yes, double helping of Hua.
Indeed.
So I do want to re-edit that and include some of the like imagery and kind of like video clips if anybody has any. Obviously, they have to be royalty free, open source, kind of free source or whatever, or permission from whoever owns them. I want to include more stuff in that from other militaries. It was just kind of like the video clips I could find that kind of went with the thing, with the kind of song that I found to use, as well as um, obviously I had to do the fucking beat drop after Landman Dragon. And I was like, oh, that sounds super cool. And he's one of the characters that I think um, a lot of military veterans kind of resonate with Lan to some extent. Like Lan is kind of the quintessential ideal soldier, right? He's stoic, he's talented, he's skilled, he's steadfast, he's loyal, he's determined, he's everything that every drill instructor, drill sergeant, TI wants their troops to be. And most of us kind of never are, but it's a good ideal to work towards. And it's part of what I love about what Daniel Henney said about playing Land, that it's very much like he is kind of quote unquote the perfect guy, and it's kind of a good ideal to kind of strive to be, at least in some ways, like Land. So I don't know. I mean, I resonated more with Rand than Land, even though I love both of them. So
I saw a good question in the chat. If there was an army in Wheel of Time that we would join, which one would we join? That's interesting. The band.
Band of the Red
The
Hand.
band.
yeah,
Band of the Red Hand. Yeah.
yeah, that would be pretty cool. I don't know. Like, there's part of me that maybe it's like some residual Weekend Warrior shit that would want to join the Two Rivers militia, I guess.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, but then there's also like, that kind of dream of always being like part of the badass group and doing the badass things. I'm like, oh, I'd love to join the like kind of reborn Valkyrie army towards the end of the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. But the Illianers, they get these really cool capes. So there's that. For the aesthetic of the uniform, that might be cool. Just kind of depends on where you want to go. Because I literally know one guy that his entire decision to join the Marine Corps was off of the dress uniform.
That's a driving factor. You'd rather look like a Cadillac than a Chevy.
I mean,
Bus
fair.
driver uniform is, it is what it is,
hey,
but it's
hey.
not the Marine Corps dress blues. Let me tell you.
Hey, Cracker Jacks and Dixie Cup, man. That was
I actually have not here with me, but I bought it whenever I was going back for my grandfather's funeral. One of the bus driver caps for the Air Force Blues, which I have never liked. It's literally just a 3-piece suit in blue, and I'm like, come on! It's like we have all this money, all this power. We have enough money and power to rain holy fire across the entire world. And these are the uniforms that you say, oh, this is when you need to look sharp. Here it is. And it's like, come on. So, and then you got the army like bringing back the pinks and greens. Like, I'm like, come on, that is what's still way cooler than the Air Force dress blues.
Well,
But yeah, I'm working on getting those pictures uploaded so we can show them.
I also found, I think, a citation of Robert Jordan's medal, like his air, some pretty badass stuff he did. Let me tell you that.
Oh yeah, I would love to see that.
See if I can't send that over to you. We could read it too. That'd be interesting for people to hear. I mean, he didn't just sit around at some mess tent. He saw some stuff. And there's a quote too. Where's Discord? There it is.
I don't know. And I got to do all this stuff just to save the pictures as a different picture.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have sent this to you ahead of time. And for
No,
people
no,
who
you're
don't
fine.
know, Robert
You did
Jordan's name
homework.
was
I did.
James Rigney.
Yeah, James Oliver Rigney.
Yeah, Robert
Jr.
Jordan was his pen name. You know, a lot of people don't know that probably, especially if you're new to the Wheel of Time. So a lot of this stuff says James Rigney. That's our boy.
Mhm.
That's Robert Jordan.
So I like seeing some of his military pictures, like this one that you sent me. This is like the first time I've ever seen a young.
Yeah.
Well, not like this specific instance, but I think it was this picture that is the first time I saw, a young
RJ.
Robert Jordan. I like to think that he's sitting there. We're already working on his notes for the Wheel of Time. Probably not.
Probably not. I don't think it was even an
I think
idea
that
for
didn't start
him.
till the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, I can headcanon it and know that I'm wrong, but still enjoy it, right?
Oh no, absolutely. That's exactly what I see when I see his picture too. Of course.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then of course we got this one that you sent me. So I would imagine this was probably the main bird that he flew on to do his helicopter gunner duties. So yeah, because it's not a medevac.
Mind if I read
not
this
designated a
citation?
medevac.
Mind if I read this citation to people here? Let's see.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll pop it up on the screen and go ahead.
Oh, yeah. The citation for the Air Medal presented to Specialist James Rigney, who distinguished himself by meritorious achievement while participating in sustained aerial flight in support of ground combat forces in the Republic of Vietnam during the period of 15 May 1969 to 5 May of 1970. He actively participated in more than 25 aerial missions over hostile territory in support of operations against communist aggression. During all these flights, he's displayed the highest order of air discipline and acted in accordance with the best traditions of the service. By his determination to accomplish his mission, in spite of the hazards inherent in repeated aerial flights over hostile territory, and by his outstanding degree of professionalism and devotion to duty, he has brought credit upon himself, his organization, and the United States Army. And that's not the only award he won. He won the Distinguished Flying Cross, and was it the Silver Star?
The Bronze Star. So he got the Distinguished Flying Cross with Oak Leaf Cluster, and he got the Bronze Star with V and an Oak Leaf Cluster, and 2 Vietnamese gallantry crosses with palm. So for those of you that don't know, I don't remember exactly what each one means, and it's different branch to branch, but I know for the Air Force, whenever you got extra devices to put on, either there was an extra kind of component of an award that you got, and that's what it signifies, which I think is what the V is. Or it was a signifier that you had been awarded multiples of the same medal. Like I had an extra device on my marksmanship ribbon. I had an extra one on my Air Force longevity ribbon, and a couple others. So, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about RJ.
Yeah, the Bronze Star was for a person who's distinguished or has distinguished himself or herself by heroic or meritorious achievement of service not involving participation in aerial flight while engaged in action against an enemy, while engaged in military operations involving conflict, while serving under friendly fire. Under friendly foreign forces engaged in armed conflict against an opposed armed force in which the U.S. military is not a belligerent party. So that's heavy stuff that he went through.
Yeah, and it's super nice. Thanks for letting us know that the V device is for Valor. I don't know if you guys know. I knew I couldn't remember, but thanks. That's awesome. Yeah, so the Gallantry Cross is a military decoration of the former government of South Vietnam or the Republic of Vietnam. Awarded to military personnel, civilians, and armed forces units and organizations in recognition of deeds of valor or heroic conduct while in combat with the enemy. Recipients were cited at the armed forces, corps, division, brigade, or regiment level. So, and it looks pretty dope.
Yeah.
It looks pretty dope. And so when it says with palm, that means the device that is on it is a palm, like the palm leaf kind of a little bit of a longer device that goes across the ribbon. So, and those are just awards from his time in Vietnam. So there's no telling. Excuse me. There's no telling. If we look, we probably could find like his full award list, but there's no telling what other kind of achievements he was recognized for while he was in the army.
So there's an interesting quote attributed to him. I don't know if you guys have read it, and it kind of has to do with some of the stuff we've talked about with, the fog of war, really, and the aftermath of what happens to, like seeing stuff like Dumais Wells and Maradon, and the shell shock and the PTSD that happens with it. If you don't mind me reading it here.
Mhm.
Please do, man.
And this is a quote from Robert Jordan that I found, and to be honest, I don't know where I found it because I just copy pasted it into notes and I failed to get the reference, which my English teacher would kill me for, I'm sure. But so I have, or used to have, a photo of a young man sitting on a log eating sea rations with a pair of chopsticks. There are 3 dead NVA laid out in a line just beside him. He didn't kill them. He didn't choose to sit there because of the bodies. It was just the most convenient place to sit. The bodies didn't bother him. He doesn't care. They're just part of the landscape. The young man is glancing at the camera, and you know in one look that you aren't going to take this guy home to meet your parents. Back in the world, you wouldn't want him in your neighborhood because he is cold, cold, cold. I strangled that SOB, drove a stake through his heart, and buried him face down under a crossroad outside Saigon before coming home, because I knew that guy wasn't made to survive in a civilian environment. I think he's gone. All of him. I hope so.
I got chills.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of what he saw and a lot of his experiences and a lot of what he didn't want to bring home. And a lot of what he still carried inside of him.
Right.
And that channeled into his works, whether they have been Conan or what we see in the Wheel of Time. I think that's what that allows him to tap into his veteran experiences and really write the aftermath of what really happens to the human cost of what happens in these kinds of events. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me like that wonders how much of like the dream sequences with Balsamon are inspired by nightmares that I'm sure he had. And scenes of Vietnam is kind of famous on TV for its scenes of fire. For the kind of Agent Oranging a forested area and then firebombing it because they can never seem to find the Viet Cong guerrillas in the grass. It's like, well, we just got to destroy the grass, or things like the white phosphorus. This very bright, very high temperature burning material. When you start looking at that lens, I think we can hearken a lot of what happens back to that. Like, there's probably you could make the potential allegory that Balsamon is indicative of the version of himself that Robert Jordan hopes that he buried in Vietnam before he left. That it's, the dream sequences are kind of like him dealing with his old self coming to him in dreams and kind of tempting him back into some what could be very negative and destructive habits, at least in the civilian environment, and probably also like in the modern military environment.
Then there's Moradin. Moradin, first of all, through his age and everything he's done, and everything he's seen, and maybe even through his, realization of his reincarnation into the same shit time after time in the same role. That could be part of it too. The idea of like where, I can imagine him in some of his contemporaries in Nam, like waking up and like still in this hellhole, I came to think that about Moradin as well.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Eben?
I know some Nam vets, my stepfather for one, but I also, I've an old friend of mine. His father was a Vietnam vet, and my friend was on vacation, and his parents were sitting his dog. and his dad would sleep with a gun under the pillow, just because he was kind of messed up, and the dog made a noise in the night, and his father woke up and shot the dog. And this was 25 years after Nam, and you're still haunted to that extent, particularly in your dreams and during times when you're not quite awake. I don't think it ever really leaves you. My stepdad has his flashbacks. He did 2 tours, and I know our guys saw combat in Afghanistan and Iran, but war has become much more of a game of remote control. It's not quite so much, hand to hand or man to man, or, one of us face to face is going to die here today. There's still some of that, but it's just not nearly as brutal. And I think because we weren't victorious and we couldn't paint Vietnam with the kind of glory and flag waving that we can with the wars before it. I think it's just that much more real and that much more brutal. And it was also broadcast live on television so much. I was born in 65, and I remember even as a kid seeing pretty rough scenes on the evening news every day from Vietnam. It didn't really end until 75, when I was 10. So like my formative years of my folks watching TV, there was horrific stuff on the news every night. And people coming home and not being right. And I think Vietnam in particular was just a defining moment that a lot of people woke up and realized just exactly what war was. It isn't flag waving. It isn't about glory. It's about survival. And some of the things that we did, some of the things that were done to us, it didn't really matter whose side it was on, because it was just brutal. And I don't think that kind of brutality was really shared by people in previous wars in the way that it was from Vietnam. And I think it's left a scar and hopefully a reluctance to want to go back to that kind of thing. I think war is easier for us now because it is so much by remote control. We're not necessarily seeing, we're seeing the camera shots of the guided missile, and just then it goes blank. So you're not seeing the damage that it's doing to buildings, to people, to civilization. But yeah, I think Vietnam was a very singular time in our history. And because of that, those who were directly affected by it probably have the most realistic view of war and the biggest scars of war of anybody that's around right now.
Yeah. I mean, so to part of that, like, I think in what we see on TV and like news reporting, it's very much appears to be that kind of like remote kind of war that, they're not showing the body cam footage or, the GoPros from troops that, like old Cav troopers pointed out, that are, clearing streets in Iraq and Afghanistan and going house to house. I mean, the stories that came out of the Marines experience in Fallujah, and the radical change to SOPs that occurred as a result of war reporting from the SOPs. The American populace. There's an aspect of being in the military that there's no amount of us sitting here and talking about and explaining that will ever make or allow a civilian to fully grasp kind of what it means and what it is.
I can't grasp what it means. I wasn't in there. I wasn't seeing it.
Yeah, but
I think
we
I'd be a
had
very different person if I had.
yeah. So we did have tons of ground troops that did find themselves in those face to face situations, clearing houses and clearing streets, and walking down the street. The buddies I have that did some time in Iraq and Afghanistan. Um, they talk about the situations where we have things like rules of engagement that very much in the line with the Geneva Convention kind of restrict what we can do. And there's a lot of veterans or a lot of combat troops on the ground that they see a guy pop out from behind a corner, fire off a mag of AK rounds at them, and then toss the gun in the middle of the street and disappear around the corner. And now that he's no longer armed, you cannot engage him unless you can make a valid argument that he's still going to be trying to attack you. So there's a lot more to war. A lot of it's covered, and I kind of use Vietnam as how people reacted to seeing the footage from Vietnam as an allegory to how people reacted to seeing the footage of the White Cloaks in the trailer. Um, the White Cloaks have always been that brutal. Just whenever we have their points of view and we're actually seeing the actors on the page, they are bumbling. They're ineffective from what we see on the page. But the history of the White Cloaks is still very much told, and they have been brutal since 11/11 FY.
Yeah.
It takes a special kind of detachment from human feeling, and a special kind of brutality to take an already deceased Amerlin and string her up in the streets for everybody to see, just for the sake of like, hey, we killed an Amerlin, but we all actually know she was already dead, and we didn't really kill her this way, at least. So people reacting to seeing someone being burned at the stake by Valda feels very similar to what I've heard people talk about in clips I've seen of how the American populace at least reacted to the footage coming out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
It was no longer this grainy kind of hua shots of World War One and World War Two that just showed far off kind of versions of the action. Seeing combat far off and not really seeing the actual death and destruction. And then with Vietnam came around, that 180. It just went a completely different direction. People were seeing on TV in their homes the brutality of war, and it drove that home to what war actually looks like and what war actually means and how brutal and gruesome it actually is. And suddenly, it was a lot harder to sit there and say, yeah, boys, go get them, whenever you saw just how terrible it was. So that's one thing I like about the trailers, that hopefully they're not going to maintain the kind of status quo of the White Cloaks looking like bumbling idiots, because based off of their historical actions, they're terrible people, but they're not bumbling idiots. But yeah.
And I think that what came out of Nam and the idea that it was the first time that these visceral images were shown to the public through live TV and stuff really changed the way that the military deals with the press and access to those environments. So that could have a lot to play into it too.
There's also the change in survivability rates. The basic first aid kit that the troops carry now is so much more robust and has so many more tools that are available to it, and the emphasis on trying to keep at least a medic or two, depending on like your breakdowns for like the squad you're rolling out with, keeping medics that are like essentially like EMS on steroids. These combat medics are freaking incredible. The survivability is just so much better now for at least U.S. troops in combat, and I would like to think most nations' troops in combat, because the unfortunate thing about war is you're sent over there to accomplish a goal, to accomplish an ideal, and the overall objective from a like national standpoint, from a government standpoint, isn't to kill as many people as you can. It's to get the opposing government to surrender, to admit defeat, to stop whatever they're doing or allow whatever you're trying to have happen. And unfortunately, whenever it gets to the point of war, it comes down to that. We always joke about. You see, like I know the old joke, or a guy that they had a chaplain, he was an Army chaplain, and he came over to the Air Force, and the dude's ribbon rack was massive. And we make the joke kind of in because the military does exercise a ton of like really dark humor and a really fucked up sense of humor, and it's kind of an extreme example of the stuff that you have to do, the training you have to go through, and then especially those that have been involved in combat. You kind of have to find a way to deal with it, and a lot of people go to humor, like I laugh to keep from going crazy, kind of thing. But they're like, oh yeah, look at when you realize your chaplain used to stack bodies, and now in the name of the Lord, kind of things like that. That is entirely a joke within the military, but you say the same kind of jokes in civilian spaces, and it's a 50-50 shot if they're going to kind of like chuckle or if they're going to be like, that is horrible. So
yeah, that I run into that often.
yeah.
That reminds me of.
I agree with this here. Yeah, that's one of the big differences. Air power and armor, far greater role in desert and mountain as opposed to jungle. So,
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and to address what I've seen in chat, yeah, I don't really know what I'm talking about on a lot of this stuff. All I have is my own personal view. I am not a combat veteran, openly so. I haven't seen a lot of these things, so the only view that I get is the same that a lot of other people get, is through the media. And I remember the start of, I believe it was Desert Storm, when CNN, it looked like a fireworks show. It didn't look like an actual attack on a city. It looked like a fireworks show. And it was, part of me was just kind of nauseated by that fact. They were showing the spectacle of it, and we were getting no actual view of what was really happening. All we were seeing were lights in a night sky. So I cannot and do not claim to be any type of expert in that. All I can say is what I saw, and the impression that it made on me. So, I'm not trying to be insulting by saying that we're seeing a lot more of remote control war, but we are in some ways because of the use of drones. But the way we're viewing it is also much more kind of a remote control, because we're only seeing it from a distance. We're not seeing glorified newsreel footage like we would have seen in World War II or World War I, but we're also not seeing anything like what we saw in Vietnam. We're seeing what the networks in the military want us to see. So it is being sanitized to a certain extent, and it is being glorified and flag waved to a certain extent, rather than actually focusing on the brutality of what is actually happening.
And that's another like kind of good segue, like the overall conversation, as we're working on kind of drawing this down here, before he who comes with the wine is booted out of his space.
I'm all right.
That I found, yeah. Oh, it's happening now?
No, I'm all right right now.
Oh, okay. I found that among veteran communities and among vets in general, as long as you're like earnest and honest about, portraying like your experiences and kind of like how you see things, don't, so excluding all the stolen valor asshats that exist in the world, because, minimize all of our lived experiences. Why don't you appreciate that? And I'm not even a combat vet. I think, oh God, some of the videos are funny, just how terrible they are at it. But anyway, in the veteran communities, having these kind of conversations and vets having different views on things, or, vets that like myself and even here that don't have combat experience. Of course, I'm assuming that by being in Afghanistan, you have combat experience. That we don't know how this stuff works from a I've done it standpoint. All we know is what training has told us and what friends that have been involved with it have told us about it. And, the tailored kind of training that the military gives us, because it's very tailored training. So, but the ability for us to talk about it and like correct misconceptions, or just express different viewpoints on how things look among the veteran community seems like incredibly robust and amazing. And you see a lot of the same thing amongst the Wheel of Time fandom, the willingness to have a discussion about the way, for the most part, people view things differently. Just like with vets, there are certain topics and aspects that either people just won't talk about, or you don't get the nice conversation because of what the topic is. If somebody that's not a combat vet was like, "Oh yeah, combat doesn't look that hard," like, yeah, see that reaction right there is like, "Oh, really? Okay, well, I'm just not listening to you ever again about anything," because one, it invalidates an experience. But it's so glaringly insulting to make comments like that it's kind of a veteran mentality of like, I'm not going to waste my time on this guy, like, because if we get into a conversation and argue, it's going to bring back some old shit, and I'm probably going to be in handcuffs by the end of the event, kind of thing. So that part's pretty cool, and it's part of what I love, and it's part of why I wanted to do this. And I want to bring in vets that are both combat and non-combat vets that are from all the branches of the U.S. military, from all other militaries, because the Australian experience is going to be very different than the U.S. experience.
Yeah,
I would love to get a North Korean troop in here and just talk with them, because all we see is what's put out on the news, but there's also a very, very different experience there. In the U.S. we have this kind of unique privilege or honor that en masse the citizenry really supports the military, really supports veterans, and it's looked upon favorably. But that does not appear to be the case, in like North Korea, where the military troops are kind of looked down on. They're not really loved by the populace. If all the reporting is to believe, which I don't see why our news media would lie about the view of North Korean troops. We're not exactly on the friendliest of terms, but who knows?
Media would never lie to us about things like that.
I don't know.
It's also.
Well, did they post it to Facebook? It's only true if they post it to Facebook.
That's true. Yeah.
The same happens in some of our allied countries. Joining the military is seen much more of like an out than it is in our country. And that plays into a lot of how they feel about their own service as well, and how we feel about our service here in our country. It's a different ambiance for sure.
Yeah. So, well, as we're drawing down here, any final thoughts, either about just military service, your military service or experience in general, how it shaped your view of the Wheel of Time, how the Wheel of Time helped you through years? I mean, I know you talked about in Afghanistan how the Wheel of Time books were the prized possession and kind of an escape from the uber shitty situation you're stuck in. So,
well, I do want to say to that note, I wouldn't call myself a combat vet either, Eben. I was there as a civilian. That is one difference for me.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was a civilian. I mean, I was there for 7 years, but it was largely by my own choice. It was a job, and because I was there as a civilian, I also got to walk the streets of Kabul, and see things kind of on the other side of the lens. And I have a blessing that in that area, I tended to blend in well enough. And
I get you. Yeah.
Recruiters, took me through some more risque areas than others, and I got to see a lot of that side of it too. So I just wanted to put that out there. My experience isn't breaking down doors in Kandahar or anything like that. I was definitely in a safe space on base.
That's my fault. I kind of amalgamated the being in Afghanistan.
Yeah, no, of course, but I don't want people getting the idea that I'm a combat vet in that sense. I have my experiences there. I have my experiences in the Marine Corps, and they are very much, the same. The biggest reason that I did go out as a contractor to begin with was because I wasn't able to go in the Marine Corps.
Right.
That it spilled out into a career that has led me to travel and study and do everything that I've been able to do is a different story. But the experiences in Afghanistan and all the surrounding countries were, in my eyes, from the contractor point of view, if you got to take advantage of it, they were unique. And I hope to bring that into account as well.
Yeah.
That, and like
I
you
know,
said, working with the other nations, phenomenal aspect of it. Absolutely. Yeah. Seeing the way that they think and that they approach the problems and how they see things really opened my eyes to a lot of the worldly part of our own mission there, and how we see Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, to be honest with you, because I found fans of Robert Jordan in Afghanistan.
Oh, cool.
Right.
Hopefully he joins us one of these days. I'm gonna text him and tell him what the fuck.
Yeah, I know.
He was watching.
It seems to be. It seems pretty common that since like especially 2001, you get out of the military, and before you know it, you've got emails from like Garda World and other contracting companies that operate in those areas, or at least did operate, may still operate. I don't know. Kind of knocking on the proverbial door, like, hey, how does a 6-figure salary sound in exchange for you committing to being in Afghanistan as a civilian contractor for 3 years? Oh, you were military police? Come guard gates here. And I'm like, yeah, how about no? Like, I'm good. It's not for me. And it's nothing against anybody that goes and do it. By all means, go and do it if you want to do it. It's just not for me. Like, I had worked my way up in through the ranks where I didn't really have to stand guard duty at gates anymore, and I didn't really want to go back to standing guard duty at gates ever again. So, yeah, where there's a gate, I have flashbacks of dropping IDs and the little red scanner light of the system for scanning IDs, and I'm like, no, I'm good.
Sorry, I worked for Garda as a IT person for a few months, so
that was the job I wanted. I would have gone if it was IT, but no, they were like, we want you to come out here and be a security guard, and I was like, yeah, no, I'll come and I'll help you with IT, and they're like, well, we don't really have any openings for that, and I'm like, well, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, my first base that I went to when I went as a contractor was one of the secret bases, like you said, the big secret bases. It was funny because we had AC-130 there, and I never forget that we weren't allowed to have any combat aircraft at that base because we were borrowing an Uzbek base, and that was the deal, no combat aircraft. But we had AC-130s there, and anytime that anyone asks, what are those airplanes for? I go, that's weather reconnaissance. That's a weather probe sticking out of the back of it. That's all that is.
It's really weird. It kind of looks like a cannon. Oh, no. Yeah, it's so it can intake more air to get more accurate data from
temperature and dew point measurements.
Yeah, all that stuff is crazy. Yeah, the base we were at, that I was at, we had a bunch of stuff. I was there when the terrorist attacks happened in France, and that was nutty because the base I was at was one of the few, if not the only base for the Air Force in the AOR that had the ability to recon targets, designate targets, strike targets, and after action targets, all within its own kind of umbrella. And for 3 days after the Paris attack. So before then, I think we averaged 7 bomb drops on ISIS a day, I think was the numerical statistical average. But for the 3 days after the Paris attacks, that went from 7 bombs a day to 70 bombs an hour was the metric they gave us.
Wow.
It was nonstop, like all day. You heard air refuelers taking off, and different combat aircraft and all that taking off, and recon aircraft. It is the experience that made me hate one of the current most used, if not the really only really famous currently used recon aircraft we have. I cannot stand the Dragon Lady. I cannot. I know there's people that are diehard fans of it and love it. It does some amazing work, but the 7 hours of sitting right there where they've got an auxiliary generator going and I can't hear. Yeah. So as we draw down, this should be a quickly answered question from Amanda here. This will probably be kind of one of the last things we kind of talk about. Which of the battles and skirmishes in the first book are we looking forward to seeing in the show?
Winter Night.
What was that?
Winter Night.
Winter's Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tarwin's Gap.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Those are
too.
both really good
Yes.
answers. I'm just going to be different. I want to see the kind of a guerrilla-esque warfare of them running from the fist of Trollocs and winding up in Shadar Logoth. So just to be different, but I agree.
No,
I don't know if
I'm
I could choose.
right with you
I don't know if
there.
I could choose Winter Night or Tarwin's Gap over the other. To be honest with you.
I think it's kind of interesting that with Tarwin's Gap, they thought they were holding back the last of it and that they were not gonna make it, and the Trollocs were gonna break through, and they lived through it. So that's something.
Yeah.
I wonder how they're gonna if they're gonna put the whoever the Dragon Reborn may be up high in the sky, right over Tarwin's Gap. I wonder if they're gonna be able to accomplish that. We'll see.
Yeah. To Matt's Dagger's point about X-rays, I too. So when I was in UAE, we had full body X-ray machines. That you can never use on females because of the chance they may be pregnant. So they got wanded by female troops that were there. But all the guys went through the X-ray machine, and I both understood why some of them were very angry and why some of them were very happy. And I never want to see another X-ray machine in my life. There was one dude, he always came in like he had cologne. He was like nice and well dressed, always smiling. And the first time he came in, I was like, "Why are you so happy?" And then we X-rayed him, and I'm like, "Get out."
Yes.
He's always like fist bumping us. Like he was a really chill dude. Like they were like,
That's the job I
OCNs.
want.
Well,
It's not exactly my cup of tea. So I was like, no, thank you. But there was a job to do, so I made my sacrifice. But for me, it was a sacrifice. For others, it might be an enjoyable experience or not as bad of an experience.
You see
Seeing that
my eyes
PTSD.
come popping out of my head.
Well, it's PTDD, post-traumatic dick disorder.
Oh god.
But,
It
but
is
yeah, it was
flashing
definitely an
to-
experience.
Madeline Kahn in History of the World Part 1, where she's like, yes, no, yes. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's, it's definitely worth seeing.
old Cav Trooper, a bias for large-scale cavalry action in the world? What? I would no. There's no bias there. No way. Oh man. Yeah, I was lucky enough to know or meet some Cav troops. I actually don't know too many troops I ever met other than individuals that weren't pretty cool people. So, Hedsky, thanks for tuning in. Good luck with the lunch, and thanks for tuning in.
Yep.
So here, as we get closer to 2 hours than I thought we were gonna get, because I definitely was like, oh yeah, we're gonna end at an hour and a half. Now you see why I said an hour to 2 hours for this. But we're gonna work.
Flew by, man.
Yeah, that's part of why. That's another reason I want to do it, because I know how much I love these discussions. I know a bunch of other vets that love these discussions. I can't wait to get more in here. Obviously, there's a metric. We can't have 80 vets on the screen at one time. Well, I don't even think StreamYard supports that. But it's going to be really hard to get more than 4 or 5 or 6 people in here at one time.
Yeah.
So that's why we might have to kind of rotate people in and out if we get that many people interested and wanting to come on. So, yeah. So in future episodes, we're going to do kind of more focused discussions on actually talking directly Wheel of Time and just kind of maybe how it harkens back to some of our experience or our interpretation of the military and just kind of our thoughts on it through that lens. So that should be a lot of fun. I'm super excited for it. I think this is going to be a fun series to do. Really appreciate everybody coming out and watching. guys, I definitely appreciate you guys being here. This was literally an offer on Twitter that you could have easily said no to or ignored, and you were so kind as to express interest and to be here and do this, and I really appreciate it.
I'm always willing to talk Wheel of Time with people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
The people at work right now are so tired of hearing me talk about it.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk about it with people that appreciate it.
It doesn't help that I got one of my coworkers. So he found out that he had 12 credits on Audible, and because I wouldn't stop talking about Wheel of Time, he got those. And so now there's, it's like freaking the boss just sitting there, and it's like the freaking Star Wars. Now there's 2 of them. It's getting out of hand.
One of my coworkers just started book 1, so on Audible, and I got my my neighbor hooked on it, and they're all sick of me.
Yeah, I've got a buddy who's on book 6 right now.
It's great watching the first read go through, and you're like, Raffo.
Oh no, I'm giving him like, he I mentioned this on Twitter, but he just got to the part where Rand was forcibly bonded by a certain Aes Sedai, and this is a full spoiler show, so
Yeah.
So Alana bonded him. Alana bonded him, and he was just like, I can't believe she did that. I'm like, yeah, I'm surprised. Varen, she's such a model Aes Sedai. I'm surprised she didn't stop her somehow. And he's like, yeah, I don't think she realized what Alana was doing. From now on, like any scene that he talks about that Varen's in, I'm going to tell him about what a great sister she is. And she is. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I just want that green dress moment to just smack him across the head. I really do.
Oh yeah.
I feel like he's just gonna barge in your door and just throw the door open and be like, "What?
You son of a bitch! You let me think."
Yeah.
All right, gents, I gotta go.
All right.
So we're going to go ahead and end the stream. Again,
great.
thank you all.
This
I'm
was
going to start the video for the outro. If you can or want to hang back for a few seconds, you're more than welcome to. I know you've got to go there, Mr. Wine. W-I-N-E.
No wine tonight.
Well, water for now. But we'll go ahead and play this outro. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And, keep your eyes out on Twitter and stuff for the Black Tower podcast, and we'll announce when the next one is. But thank you all, and bye.
Good night.
Always watching, always running the show. In the tower, you can bring your pain. In the tower, you can feel the strain. You've been having so much trouble just fitting in.